Listeners' discretion is advised as we'll be talking about mental health issues. If anyone out there is struggling with any mental health issues, call Lifeline on 131114 and please reach out to your family and friends. G'day, welcome to True Blue History. I'm Adam Bloom. Today's special guest is psychologist, author and former SASR operator and team leader, Sergeant Harry Moffitt. Harry served for more than 25 years in the SASR and has joined us today to talk about his deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq and East Timor and his life after service. Hi Harry, thanks for joining us on the show.
No worries, Adam. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Harry. It's an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on the show. So you were born into a military family. Can you tell us about your father's service and those of your relatives? And did you feel that you were following family tradition by enlisting in the Australian Defence Force?
Yeah, we do have a rich military heritage in the Moffitt family, which goes back to probably the 16th, 17th century in the English lineage on my father's side. But I always say that it's not just about the military service. I've got a strong sense of, or a strong history of service, full stop. My mother was a nurse all of her life. And that's strong in her side of the family as well. So between nursing and soldiering, or my father was in the Navy, he was a sailor. I think between the military and that medical service, I guess that's how I would reflect on my heritage.
So growing up, like many military families, you've moved regularly. Rather than having a defined hometown, you've said that you think of yourself as coming from all over Australia. What effects did living a transient childhood have on you later on, and did it influence you to provide a more stable home environment for your family and what you experienced when you were growing up?
Yeah, I think definitely was mindful of wanting the kids to be Georgia and Henry, my daughter and son respectively. They to have them grow up in the same house in the same suburbs. So it was definitely mindful of that. When you're growing up, you don't really. I don't think you at the time reflect and think, geez, I'm moving around a lot, or you just kind of get on with it. And I had two great brothers. The three of us love each other dearly and still get along, are still thick as thieves. But so we always had each other to bounce around off. But I think it does unsettle you, and it can make you, I suppose, a little slow to take up or to build deep friendships. Just because I suppose you become a bit anxious about moving in the next 18 months or 2 years. So you do have a lot of sad times when you make friends and then you depart again. So I think that builds up this kind of resistance sometimes to building close friendships. But apart from that, I'd say moving around and being a citizen of Australia was a good thing. I think it also built resilience in us to just get on with life, get to a new school, get on with it. And as a result, the three of us did reasonably well at school, given all of I think we went to between 6 and 9 different schools and high schools over the journey. So I think we did okay. And of course, at the end of the day, I had my mother and dad as well, but my mother who kept the core of the family together and looked after us. That helped a lot. She was as stoic and as tough as they come, and loving and compassionate. But she just got on and got stuff done.
So cricket is obviously one of your passions, and many Australian families would be able to identify with street cricket and family cricket matches. Can you share with us some of your more memorable matches as playing as a family, as a young fella?
Yeah, there's so many, particularly between the four of us, Dad, Robert and Paul, my brothers, and even Mum kind of in the background, always there. I think she used to take a great deal of pride and satisfaction watching us play cricket, just knowing that the family were there. And Yeah, look, I think probably more themes than specific games. Anytime you got the old man out, that was very memorable because he was pretty handy backyard cricketer in particular. But some of the games that we played got quite heated at times, and there'd be the odd punch up between me and another brother or those two, and you never got in the way of it because as soon as you get between two brothers having a fight, well, that's one rule: you never do it, because you trust they're not going to kill each other. But I think things like we used to play into the dark. Dad used to set up lights in the backyard because we'd play after dark and until Mum had dinner ready, or even if Dad was cooking the barbie. And as soon as we'd finished, we'd have dinner, have our showers, and then we'd break out the Nerf ball and the plastic bat, and we'd play in the hallway on our knees in the lounge room. And we even played backyard cricket, believe it or not, on a table such as this, about 6 foot by 3 foot table with a ruler and some scrunched up paper, and you caught it one-handed off the edge of the table. There's no specific. I suppose from a childhood and tying it back to your previous question, whenever we move to a new place, whether it be Janelli or Sutherland or Loftus or down here in Melbourne in Hastings or Cerberus, you break out, or WA or wherever we move to, you break out a bat and a ball and start playing some street cricket, and then the kids come from all around, and it was such a great way and powerful way to build friendships immediately you got to a new place.
Absolutely, I can relate to it as well. As a kid, I've got fond memories of playing street cricket, and it's a family tradition that we have as well on Boxing Day, and you play a game, and so it instills, I think the best thing about street cricket compared to club cricket is it's open to anyone and there's no judgment. Like you can actually get out and just and you can be a crap bowler or it doesn't matter. You're part of the game.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone gets a bat. Everyone gets a bowl. I like that it organises quickly. You have people looking out for the welfare of others. So if you already had a bat, get another one. The boastfulness is taken out pretty quick. I've thought a lot about this, and there's probably not another sport that's as inclusive in that regard. We played out at the front of the house here on Christmas Day with all age groups, all genders, all people from all backgrounds, and we played for like 2 or 3 hours, and everybody had a ball. And I don't think you could do that with for example, an AFL ball or a soccer ball. Well.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same, and it's with cricket, Harry, it too. And I played as well. It brings the inner competitiveness out in you. Like you're bowling, you want to get someone out, and you want to bat or you want to take that catch, or it does. And like I've known some of my family members like, I don't want to play, and then as soon as they play, they want to rip your head off. Like it's so.
No, it's good. I enjoy it because you can have a competitive streak, but that's a nice side of it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned your mum, and in your book, 11 Bats, it's very clear that she holds a dear place in your heart. Can you tell us about Sandy Wright and the values she instilled in you?
No, Sandra was the type of person who, when she walked in the room, she lit the room up, and it kind of got a jolt of energy, of really positive energy. That was the kind of personality she was. She was pretty quiet away from families and groups, but and pretty reflective. But no, my mum was probably the hardest working person I've ever met. She was always had time for everyone, always an open door. Of all of the families, we were that family that seems to have all the kids around their place all the time. And I used to come home and there'd be kids, my mates would already be there chatting to mum around the table, or having a milk and cookies or whatever, cordial and chips. And so she was that kind of person. And I remember that when mum passed way before her time, when she was 49 in 1995, and died of breast cancer, at her funeral, the front pillars, the front pews were all full of my friends, which I think is testament to her. So, look, just strong values of a sense of humour, service to others, putting other people first, deep sense of family. I think they're the main things that she really instilled in us. And I've got to say that for me and my brothers, there's still a massive hole there. I don't think you ever really get over it. But just being taken at such a young age, I don't think that we've recovered as well as we would have liked in some regards. But we sadly miss her. Yeah.
I think too, Harry, everyone's got that one person in their life that, that is their inspiration. And for me, it was my late nan. And she was similar to your mum, and she actually had breast cancer as well. So it's a close, and she actually, her breast, mastectomy. And she died of emphysema, but she instilled in me the values that I have. And she instilled that, always put others first, like your mum, and that to never settle, always strive for more and become more, and it's we've all got that one person, don't we, that we do have as our inspiration, and we hold on the high pedestal, that and give you your values for life that you want to take forward.
Yeah, and you don't, the thing about values and beliefs that we really we collect them passively through time. And you don't really think about them at the time. They're just pure role modelling. And I think mum, and you hear, when I say role modelling, mum talks the way she talks and holds herself. But, certainly I know, I hope and I reflect that I'm a hard worker and I have a strong work ethic. And I certainly got that from her. But it's interesting. I don't know whether I don't talk about it often, but when I was serving in Afghanistan, Iraq, and places like that, and there's times when you think, either in the moment you are fearful for your own safety and the safety of others, but there's also moments like the night before you're going out on a mission where you know that there's going to be more elevated risk than there might otherwise be, especially on high value targets, and you have a think about your own mortality and the possibility of not coming back. I took some kind of comfort, was strange, from knowing that I would be joining mum. Now, I'm not a religious person, but there is a strange comfort in that, and I've always have reflected on the values and who she was as a person. And that strange comfort you get from knowing that there's somewhere to go. I don't know. It's a kind of not a spiritual thing, not a supernatural thing, which is what I call religion. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I've become a crew leader in the RFS, and I think it comes back to with what you're saying as well as with leadership, is when I first became a crew leader, and another crew leader said to me, he said, look, your priorities are going to change now. He said, you're going to be you're not going to care more, you're going to care more for your crew's safety than your own safety. And I it's something you touch on when you're in Afghanistan, is I've said to my mum that, Mum, if I pay the ultimate sacrifice on the fire ground and my crew gets home safe, I said, to me, that's a win. And I said, I look at it that way. And Mum said, yeah, but I've lost you. And I said, yes, but I said, Mum, if you look at it on the other way, if I lose all my crew and I'm the only one that survives, I said, I couldn't live with myself. And it's like you say, when you go into like when you go into Afghanistan I feel very connected with my nan, and I know that she's my guardian angel. And there's times where you think, I shouldn't come out of this unscathed, but there's just something that you can know yourself with some things that happened over when you were serving over in Afghanistan, where you go, ooh, yeah, it's heightened, but I've come through it.
Yeah, well, and there's also a mental skill too. The fears and doubts that you have in your mind, you should treat those and deliberately, so not passively. So now that you're growing up, and now that I'm growing up, and even back, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I started to become aware of what were good values, because as I said, I think when you're young, you just passively collect them along the way, and hopefully you've grown up in a loving environment. But that the mental skills to overcome the threats and fears that you can anticipate. And sometimes it's just by whatever means you can. And if you can mitigate those deliberately, and I employed thinking about my mother when I had a fear or doubts about a mission, about the team, or about us, about myself. These are deliberate skills, that you can employ. And they might sound a little contrived, but that's okay too. So I think there's the virtues of stoicism in using those mental skills to overcome those doubts and fears you may have.
Absolutely. So during your early years at school, you were bullied, and you were bullied a lot. And what one day, years later, you met one of your former bullies, and what happened, and how did you cope with the bullying, and what effects, looking back now, what effects does it still have on you today?
Well, I fucking hate bullies, and I'll travel anywhere in the world to fight them, and I'll do whatever I need to stand up to them within my own means. Can't stand them; they're cowards. And that's probably where I stand with them. Old mate, when I met, we'll call him Johnny, when I met him in the pub at the Cottesloe Hotel over a pool table, he was bloody, he couldn't get his tongue out of my bum quick enough, So I took great pleasure in milking that for a little while. But look, I don't hold grudges. I never have. I never will. I forgive everyone. So I found it in my heart after he bought me a beer. And I remember he was just part of the kind of gravity that kind of pulled their little gang along. I think bullying's probably behind. It's a soft term for a much more sinister concept, human construct. And it's probably part of a cluster of behaviours of arseholes that think that they own the corner store on stuff, and on life or performance or teams or leadership or business or whatever endeavour that they find themselves in, and they're everywhere. As a child who moved from school to school and town to town, there's no doubt that over time that impacted me on potentially made me more a attention-seeking or a class clown or easily distracted or distracting. So I probably had a bit of a target on my head anyway, and maybe overcompensated in friendship situations at time. And if you're the target of, if you come across that way, the bullies will probably target you. So there was probably a little bit of that, and I probably attracted a little bit more attention than I might have otherwise done. But I would say the amount of bullying that I did get, particularly in high school, and that was violent. It was, spat on, beaten, thrown naked into showers and whipped with wet towels and whatnot. Some pretty horrendous stuff. I always reflect on that and say they just made me stronger and made me better than I would have otherwise been. And, again, it kind of put me back in my place a little. It did, right the overcompensation and attention seeking, although some of my mates would argue the other way. But it kind of moderated my behaviour a little. But certainly to the extent that it happened, I think it was, pretty vicious stuff. And I think now I feel stronger in a way in my own mind again, bringing some clarity to my thinking and some reflective practices. I feel stronger, better, and I don't blame them. And I know what's happened to those guys. I've followed them over time, and fucking losers, and I'm sorry to hear that about them, you know, because in another life they probably could have been really good people, but they haven't. They've pursued their life of whatever, and you know, ultimately we all choose our own journey. So at this end of my life, I have absolutely no regrets about it, and it's made me really eyes wide open and to others around me that are like that, and probably formed my opinion around the arseholes of the world, and I just will not tolerate them, and I'll point them out as soon as I can, whenever I see them.
Absolutely. I'm sitting across from you, and I can relate. I wasn't, for me, Harry, I wasn't whipped. It was more the mental abuse and you know, the scars of, you know, being. I was an easy target because, as I said to you before, I had ADD. My learning was a challenge. I was a bigger boy, so I was made fun of. I was the easy target in the room, and I guess for a long time into my early 20s, I was naive with the world too. I was a very young, naive boy, and I've learnt through exactly what you've been saying that now I'm having the last laugh against the bullies with doing the things that I'm doing, like sitting here talking to you. I was made fun of when I said I was going to start a podcast, and the guys at my old work made fun of me and said, "You think you're going to make it as a podcaster?" And I'm now throwing it back in their face, and I've learnt as well. The only way to face a bully is head on. They inspire me, and the greatest thing that I've learnt through my own challenges is that the moment you stop caring what others think about you, it's the greatest power that you have against bullying, that you go, yeah, I just don't give a shit about you, and just stay in your lane and do what you need to do. And that's what I've learnt. But it is traumatic, isn't it? Like and the scars, they take a long time to heal.
Yeah, definitely at the time. Sitting in class all day, shitting yourself because you know you're going to walk out and get the shit beat out of you, or just even anticipating the fact that there'll be a fight after school, and it's never fair. You know, I mean, I more than half of them, I would have loved to just had a go, and actually become a pretty decent fighter, I think, after a while. But it was never fair, you know, so I never got to kind of just one-on-one or pick one of them, you know, and it was always, you know, the three biggest blokes, and they'd give you a clobbering. So, but look, as I said, mate, I don't harbour any grudges or anything like that. I think, what goes around comes around.
Absolutely, you're 100% correct. So you went through your bullying, and what inspired you to consider the military as a career, or did you have any other plans apart from the military?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to be running out a full forward for Hawthorn Footy Club in a grand final and winning a Norm Smith medal. That was what I was going to be doing. Just didn't quite measure up across the chest or height-wise. Look, footy and cricket and sports were my thing. I was pretty academic, or was lucky enough to be academic enough, and did well enough at school. So I had an idea of either architecture or psychology. Late in my year 12, I thought about psychology. Finished year 12, but I think, you know, the clincher for me, where I really gravitated to the military, although it was always in the background, was when I first experienced the SAS through Princess Gate and the Iranian hostage siege in London. Probably seeing that splashed across the press really left a massive impression on me. And, you know, 12-year-old boy, it's black and white, front page of the Herald Sun or the Herald as it would have been then, or maybe it was just the Sun then. And seeing it on telly, in the black and white telly, those things. And then I was, you know, I set my mind on fire. All I did was read about, you know, special forces, of which there was none in Australia. There was no books on Australian SAS at all. There was mostly US and British, and World War II, and a little bit of Vietnam, but not too much. So that was one part, and also met in high school a bit later on in my early high school days, year 8 or 9. I met a couple of SAS guys. Dad was posted to WA, and they were really impressive men. So they kind of I fessed up to them. There's something I would consider to do, and what's it all about. And I think once you start those discussions, and I remember Martin Studdart, kind of maybe just inferring or just giving a bit more interest to me around that subject than normally. And I think he really encouraged me, whether he meant to or not. I think he did, but encouraged me. If you're going to pursue this is how I could see you doing it. And I remember, stay in school, be educated, do those types of things, but train and get strong mentally, and it was kind of the first time I really heard about being mentally strong. It's only become a thing recently. Everyone says, "Oh, I was doing this, that, and the other." There's no being mentally tough or training mental skills or tools or anything before probably 2005 or 2008, and I've been tracking this a long time. So for him, and another book by a guy named Percy Serity, who I became interested in these mental, this appreciation of the mental skills and the mental processes and cognitive processes, hit my radar for the first time, and I felt like I had to, go to the ends of the earth to find information about it. But that intrigued me.
How pivotal of a moment was it when your parents divorced for you to make the decision to go to the military?
It probably accelerated a few things. Till that stage, I was still looking at university, and I completed year 12 and around just before I went into my finals for year 12, about halfway through that year, is when Mum and Dad separated, and it was like a nuclear bomb went off in the home, and it just devastated us at that time, all of us, including my father. And right in the middle of the final year of your high school, right at the time when we're doing maths and physics and chemistry and bloody economics, and what else was I doing? I was doing everything. So they were pretty tough subjects, I don't mind saying. And it was just hard. I disappeared down to Mandurah and spent weeks, a couple of weeks by myself trying to study, but just devastated. So it probably accelerated it, because I might have gone off to university. I was toying with going to officer school, but I'm glad I didn't, because I understood at that stage that if you want to go into the SAS and be on the teams, officers kind of drop in and out of the unit through their careers and probably spend maximum 2 or 3 years in the unit proper, as on in the team. So I think all of that jumbled together forced my hand, and the very pretty much straight out of the back of year 12 got sacked from my job in Perth at the Hilton as a waiter for drinking, and that I just went, fuck it, I'll walk across the road, and signed up, and I was off.
So you've signed up, and after completing Kapooka, you were gutted when you learned that you weren't going to the infantry, which is what you wanted to do. And where did you go, and why did you think that you were chosen to go there, and what skills did you learn that would help you later on in your career?
Yeah, so I went to K-Town and loved it. I actually, for the first time, felt like, this will sound strange, but a competent person in the room, one of the more competent people in the room. I really felt at home there in the military, and enjoyed everything we did there. At the end of Kapooka, once you finish the course and you pass out or march out, you're allocated, or before you do it, march out, but you're at the end of the course, you're allocated to a corps based on your general aptitude testing and some other things and your results. So they decide for you which corps you're going into, and there's bands and all this type of stuff. And it's similar today, but it's back then. And I was offered, I wanted infantry, and I was offered SIG Corps amongst other things. And I took SIG Corps. And the reason I took that and I wasn't too deflated per se, because I already knew, having in previous discussions, that SIG Corps was actually, if not it was the second best way to get to the regiment because they have their own special squadron, SIG squadron. And so I wasn't too devastated. I was pretty gutted when they sent me to the School of Signals, and I did Morse code and bloody typing and all that type of stuff. So it wasn't exactly the start I want. I want to be on machine guns and being out in the bush getting dirty, but I was in a typing pool. So, I mean, I was the only one of only a few blokes in a room full of women. So it had its upsides from that perspective. But it wasn't the start I was after. But during that I really look back on that as value adding and enhancing my career as a macro, because I learnt typing. A skill right now sitting here today is something I'm so grateful for. I can belt out 500 words in a few minutes, because of that. And Morse code, when I got to the regiment, Morse code was still the way we communicated from New Guinea or from anywhere in the world back to Swanbourne or wherever we needed to. So I was on a flyer to start with. I already had a long, hard course ticked off. And also, I ended up in Townsville, being posted to Townsville. I spent a lot of time with 1 and 2-4 RAR, who they were at that stage, the infantry battalion. So I got plenty of dirt and plenty of guns and plenty of humping under my legs, and made some really, really great lifelong friends in the infantry battalion. So I kind of had, it was, again, you don't know this at the time, and you're certain no one's smart enough to be reflecting on it at the time. But looking back, I probably couldn't have had a better preparation, to be honest.
So as you said, you signals now, and then you went for a SASR selection. Most people would be aware that the selection process is tough and it has a high attrition rate. How did you mentally and physically prepare for selection?
Well, physically, I had a training program that I stuck to, which incorporated cardio, weights, cardio gym, and a lot of stomping and navigation. So at that stage, again, things kind of just fell into place. Mum and Dad had got back together for a period, went up to Roleystone, so I was up in the hills of WA, pretty much the same land that I was going to be doing the selection and training in. And I think mentally I was aware. I was kind of aware that mental toughness. But at that stage it was all that was time alone, thinking to myself. I had a sense that negative thoughts were bad, so trying to suppress those. So you come up where everyone has these mental skills that are now well known, or they knew about them back in ancient Greek times, but I just had an intuitive sense and just followed my own kind of thinking patterns from the mental side. So, and had conversations with myself around what's going to be tough, and I'm probably going to want to quit at some stage. So what am I going to think then? So in a kind of barside psychology way, I sorted that out, or I think I did, One thing I will say, the lesson I learned, which was bad, which I would not do again, was I got it into my mind that I needed to be a certain weight or size, and I'm probably at my fighting weight now, which is around mid-late 70s, and that's all I needed to be when I went for selection. My advice to anyone going through selection, you don't have to be big. In fact, your job will be limited by how big you are. You'll be narrow and just be a knuckle-dragging bloody gunslinger, which is great fun, don't get me wrong. But there's so many other jobs that being massive and huge just don't quite fit the bill. And I know there'll be a lot of my mates going, "Oh, bullshit, you're skinny," but you don't. It's a complete myth, and you can function perfectly and probably have a longer life in these environments if you're just hard and fit and strong and just maintain yourself. Don't in the early days, guys are going to the gym every day, some twice a day, thinking more is more, and that's just not how it works. So I got to 85 kilos and maintained that for a long time, but geez, I struggled to maintain it,
Absolutely. So what was for you, Harry, what was the toughest part of selection?
Look, I'm going to sound a bit boastful and say I enjoyed it all. I think the last day and the last night were the toughest, where we were really, really worn down. But by the by, I enjoyed the process. It was super, super tough. I didn't make every single mark perfectly. I didn't do everything perfectly. I kind of won ugly for selection. But I felt like I gave a great account of myself, and I like to think I finished midfield in the 20 or 25 that passed. And, you know, yeah, I didn't find anything particularly difficult. You know, having to rerun the 3.2 with the blokes who didn't pass it the first time was fucking tough. But managed to. But you speak to a lot of guys, and they'll reflect quite warmly on selection. So I would say it met all of my expectations, and maybe a bit more. But I'm glad I knew that if I finished, I had it firm in my mind that if I finished, I'd be in the running. You know, I'd be in a good spot. We had maybe 40 finished, and I think we had 23. We had 22 eventually, but I think we had 23 or 24 pass, get selected. And I thought, if I'm there at the end, I'm going to be hard to knock off or knock out. You know, that was my attitude.
So you share in the book of being interrogated by a female instructor. Can you tell us about that and how you managed to not only defy her, but be a little bit cheeky as well?
Yeah, I've always been known for being a bit cheeky. So on resistance to interrogation training, which I'm happy to say hasn't changed a great deal. It's been under review and investigation. It's kind of rubbish, but I think I found it was an excellent process to go through, very insightful from a personal perspective. One of the stands, you know, very quickly, RTI goes for, or ours went for 3 days. You don't eat much. In fact, you eat stuff all. You don't sleep. You get 40-minute blocks, and that just turns you into a walking zombie. And this is off the back of a 6-week patrol course too, which is we're all down about 10 kilos and hadn't had much sleep, and we'd had a bout of diarrhoea had gone through the camp in the last few days. So we weren't in good nick when we went in the bag, which is affectionately known as. Anyway, during part way through there, I can't remember when it was. I was just a walking zombie, kind of hallucinating most of the time, in and out of hallucinations. But I went into this tent. It was a humiliation type stand where you're naked, there's a woman in there and commenting on the size of your old fella and all these types of things, and just trying to offset you and then ask you questions. And that's the kind of the insight to the interrogation that you get. Anyway, she was making me do sit-ups, and, you know, my old fella, my meat and 3 veg, kind of looked like a bloody turtle with its head drawn in, and I looked down and she's making me do sit-ups, and I'm smashing them out. We were super fit, you know, getting to 30 and 40 and 50 and still going. I think that was frustrating her, you know, because she's counting. And a bug crawled up onto my dick, and I stopped mid sit-up, grabbed the bug and threw it off to the side, and then cracked on and kept going. And that just made her blow up, you know, and she got super frustrated and was, you know, cracked the shits and said, I'll tell you when to stop, and don't stop unless I tell you. And then she was off in the side dirt looking for the bug, you know. I'm thinking, she's lost it. and she was looking for the bug, and I'm not even sure it was the bug, but I think in the book I large it up and I said, you know, that she found it and put it back on, and the poor old bug was kind of resigned to what the fuck's going on there. But it was a funny moment. I think it just goes to show that there's so much stress and tension in these courses and this training that even the instructors are under the pump, you know.
So you were in the bag, you complete your training, and so you were finally, after many more months, you were given your Sandy Beret and with the Who Dares wins, you were part of the regiment. What were early years like for you in the regiment?
Yeah, tough. For me, I found it difficult just to maintain and keep up with the hectic pace. It was breakneck, and there's some big, strong, professional, experienced men, and I was young. I was 22-ish. So I found it really challenging. I think after the journey of solo training for selection, going on to selection, very insular, very solo, and then you join a team, you got your Rio year for your reinforcement cycle for 18 months. It's a long time, and we're still thick as thieves, and all Rio courses are, or cohorts. there's only ever been around 1,500 of us, so it's a small community, and you become very attached. Then you get broken up and you're into your troops, and I was in a very good troop initially, but it was just really hard keeping up, and I wasn't watching myself and training hard, and probably when we had a downtime, probably drinking a bit much, and not sleeping well and not eating well. So you're kind of you're in the bubble, and I only didn't take many cracks for me to kind of feel burnt out and at times as if I wasn't enjoying it. That was my reflection, but around the mid-90s.
And at that stage, was there much going on, Harry? Like, was there many deployments, or was there much happening or were we in a quiet holding period for what was going to come?
Oh, look, it was, there certainly wasn't any deployments of the nature of Afghanistan, Iraq and Timor that period. But it wasn't any less busy. It's a bit of a myth when I talk to the young fellas during that time, going, well, you were back in the 90s and you weren't doing anything. I was just, it's bullshit. We were as busy or busier, to be honest. We were away. We were on every bloody exercise. Everybody wanted the SAS. We were overseas. We had a remit for the Southeast Asia region, which we're only just getting back into now. We went missing there for 2 decades, so that was remiss. And we're also holding a counter-terrorism role before it was a real thing. Now it's become this behemoth, and that meant every state, every special ops police tactical group training, exercising with them. So I remember making a rock T-shirt around our troop, and it had all the dates. It was like it was a rock tour. All the dates of where we were, and it was to sit back and look at that shirt and go, Jesus, we're away a lot. So, at its peak in Afghanistan, I think I spent 14 months out of 18 months away, and I reckon in the 90s at times it probably wasn't far off that. It was probably 7, 8, 9 months away, and then your training, and the part that no one sees unless you're inside is every time you get a new skill, you need to go away once a year to update that skill, and sometimes twice. Parachuting, you need to jump every X amount of months, depending on what qualification you're at. So yes, no deployments, no near-death experiences, although more blokes have been killed in training than have been on operations. But it was intense. You spent a lot of time away, lots.
So what made you come to the decision of discharging when you did at the first time, not the second time?
Yeah, I think I was burnt out. I was feeling under the pump. I wasn't enjoying it. There was a little bit of a sense of we were doing all this training and we had all these commitments, and everybody wanted a piece of us on exercises and etc. I was a survival expert, so-called, so I was on every survival course as an instructor the Army and the Air Force ran. So yeah, definitely burnout. Mum was crook. There was just a sense in me that I needed a break, I think, and so in 95. I discharged. Not long after that, quite a number of guys did as well. The regiment was probably just in a little bit conventional as well compared to what we had been born into. There was a few changes in the Defence Force, and the military hires people to be in this organisation, to be innovative, to be creative, to have to push the envelope. That's what you need. And at times it's kind of wavered into this conventional narrative, which just is the wrong approach. And I think that was part of it as well. So, yeah, a few things conspired, and I discharged. And, actually I had a great time, went and set up a business and enjoyed that, and enjoyed some time with my daughter, who was born in 95. So that was, reflect kindly on that, of course, yeah.
Absolutely. And we go forward a few years, and you had a stint in England. And what were you doing over there when you were in England?
Yeah, that was around 2000 when we went to England. That inspired me. I ended up joining the police. I enjoyed as a gym instructor or care manager for the local constabulary, and it wasn't long before a big South African fella come and grabbed me and said, "Do you want to come and help us in some other matters, training with weapons and unhand, what do you call it, unarmed defensive tactics and all sort of stuff?" So I said yes. I'd come across. So I ended up working there for a year and really enjoyed that. And it was around that time that a few phone calls with regiment guys saying, "Did you want to come back?" And then September 11 happened not long after. I'd set a training process to put to come back to the unit, and then September 11 happened, and it changed everything.
And your first deployment to Afghanistan was in 2002. And obviously that first deployment would be one of many over the next period of time and our longest war. Did you feel at the time that this would be Australia's longest war when you went to Afghanistan, and what had changed going forward in the years that you would deploy to Afghanistan again?
Yeah, it didn't feel like it. It felt like we might get a couple of deployments each squadron, so we might get a few rotations through. And that certainly is in your thinking, like how many are you going to get, and because you want to do it, people are tripping over themselves to get out the door. But it felt like it was very purposeful. We were part of a special ops community, special ops coalition that were hunting UBL and Taliban and fighting them, and Al Qaeda, and fighting them out of the country, which we did. And there was some magnificent work done by the regiment, whether it be on high altitude OP work. That's all foot patrolling. It's fucking hard work. That's mind-blowingly hard work. And it takes every ounce of your selection and training to maintain that. It's not work for the faint-hearted or the average Joe. Right through to direct action, battle assessments. We did a whole range of work through there, and it was brilliant. And it felt like peak SAS too in the early parts of the war, because we were doing all of our roles, and we were being called on by a coalition led by the US and UK, who knew how to employ special ops. And I hate to say it, but our Australian conventional commanders have always struggled with that, and still do to this day. So at that stage, we were super purposeful, really felt clear what our mission was, and we were winning, if you want to put a metric on it. And that is in stark contrast to once we settled into the conventional occupation of TK around probably 2000, and by 2007 or 8, we became just another layer of defence in the routine operations, which they were around Uruzgan. So that's probably the big difference. I could go on about that for another hour and a half, but I think it's reasonable to say, and we brought this up at the time, that the pivot to Iraq was a mistake. Going into Iraq, personally, I think it was always going to be a shit fight, and we've left a terrible legacy there. And I don't think that the reasons and how they went in. Saddam Hussein, apart from they should have got him 10 years ago, was a horrible arsehole and deserved some kind of comeuppance. But the shock and awe thing, I think, was bloody garbage at the time, and I still think it was today. And that was a distraction, and it just felt like it gave the enemy in Afghanistan a chance and a rebreather to regroup. And I think history will reflect that to be the case.
So, because you came back from Afghanistan, and then you deployed to Iraq in 2003. So you went back to back, 2002, 2003. There's some not much high tempo, not much time to decompress from Afghanistan, just straight back into in the next part of the fighting. And as you've said, that's something that history will say it was a mistake. What did you take away from that personally, your deployment to Iraq?
It was the boys' own adventure. That's part of it. Let's be honest here. There's a lot of adventurism in this stuff. It's why men and boys go to war. particularly for an Australian, because we've never really had to be, defend our own ground. We've been attacked, there's no doubt. But look, I would have, like everybody else, you're kind of lining up and tripping over each other to get out the door. I was actually taken off mid-course. I was on a course, and it put a few noses out of joint that I went away on that to that deployment, because there was a few others who probably thought it was their turn, and they might have been right, But who was I to say no when I was asked to go on that? Iraq was different. It was all urban. We didn't do any fighting per se there. We were a PSD, and we had some other responsibilities as well. Again, SASs really shouldn't be frontline fighting ever. We should be prepared to do it for sure, and do DAs and those types of things, and clandestine type operations. But I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the insights. It was traumatic to hear and see the results of suicide bombings, and that happened on an hourly basis at some times, and we did see a lot of the outcomes of that. So in a different way, it was a different insight, but it's a serious job, and we were there to get it done. But the break in between, that was the start of it. You alluded to it before, that the next 10 years were just breakneck. It kind of went fizzed by for me, from 6-month deployment to a 4-month deployment to a month deployment to a 6 to a 4 to a whatever. It was crazy time.
So what had changed from your first deployment? Obviously, you mentioned Afghanistan did change. You left Iraq and then deployed again to Afghanistan. Was that in 2005 that you deployed back again?
Yeah. So I did a couple of trips to Iraq, and then back 2005, we were first on the ground when Australia took over from the Dutch at Tarankout. And that was good as well. When we first, 2005, early Afghanistan, from 2005, we were doing long-range vehicle patrols, we were doing foot patrols, we were doing what I like to think was classic SAS. And we lost our way, there's no doubt about that. And whether that's our fault or probably partly our fault, because we got sucked into the sexy DA rubbish. And I think for the most part, a lot of that was warranted, but there was a big part of that which probably wasn't, that we were overused and the infantry could have been used. And again, that's not just, everyone's blaming leadership, but that's bullshit. We have a role in that. We didn't want to give it up in a lot of senses. So that early part was great. I think, in fact, I'd have to say that was probably the fondest memories I have of being in an SAS squadron and troop. And in 04, 5, 6 was probably the tightest squadron I've been. I was in 2 squadron then, and everybody got along. It was a real brotherhood in that squadron, and I think most people would reflect the same, look back on that. So they were great times, and then and we did some amazing work, deep behind enemy lines, lots of night work, got some baddies, and enjoyed ourselves as much as you can in that context, so I think, from there, as the base grew and as the conventional footprint grew, we just became, almost this isolated island in the middle of it all. And that's fraught. I don't think there should ever be a time where your special operations should be co-located as deeply and as embedded and as ingrained in your conventional forces as we did. And I look, a donkey doesn't hit its head on the same rock twice. So I hope our ADF has learnt a very good lesson in how not to use or position special ops, because your geography, how you're positioned, where you are, all those things play into a mindset and a narrative that the organisation takes on, and they do that subliminally or subconsciously as an organisation. And so I think that's where the well-documented now tensions between the two were born out of, and it's now passé almost to say that we were rolled and re-rolled into oblivion and to this narrow kind of one-trick pony by the end of it.
Would you say that for you, Harry, that the early successes that the SAS had, would you say that you were too good at what you were doing that would come back later on to bite you and the regiment of the early successes that you had in Afghanistan?
Yeah, no, I think we were victims of our own success, is what you're saying, and I think that's a line in the book, and definitely, senior leadership in the military, political. I've always said around, Lieutenant Colonel is when the politics really comes into play, it would appear. And so they start to behave like that, and I think that they take on the characteristics and the behaviours of politicians, and one of those is that if something's working, don't break it, don't fix it, and if someone's giving you success, continue to use them. And so the SAS brought a lot of success, a lot of good numbers that they could report up, and I think that set about a cycle. And as I said before, I've heard some whinging and complaining from us, saying, we're overused, and I never heard that once in 2008 from anyone. I never ever heard a guy say, I'm tired, I don't want to go, or I think we're going too hard or too fast. If someone did, good on them, but I heard a lot during that time. So I think we need to take a bit of ownership for how hard we were working and self-monitoring. I thought we were poor at that.
Absolutely. So you come back from your second deployment and then you were deployed again in 2008. What was different about this trip compared to the previous tours?
I was only there for a very short time, as you might remember from the book, because I drove over an IED on day 2 or 3 of our first nursery patrol. But what was apparent was there was less appetite for that classical SAS stuff that I mentioned before. I've always been a bit of an outside the box thinker, more probably a bit further outside the box than most, and I felt a tightening of our roles, and that was absolutely the case by 2010. You even raise a prospect of doing a foot patrol overnight or something, and some of the young guys were going, well, what are we doing that for? That's old school. I said, well, that was a reflection. But in 2000, I just didn't really even get a chance to fire a shot, because on the third day, I'd been in the country only a few weeks, and we went out on what we call the nursery patrol, which is just to get out and get the atmospherics close to the base, meet the locals, get a sense, maybe cause the enemy to communicate or do some things differently, but just to shake out and get our stuff sorted. And driving back to base early one morning, I drove over an IED, it detonated, killed Shaw McCarthy instantly, and I was wounded superficially. In fact, I could have gone back and stayed in country, but ended up with a severe leg infection, which I'm very grateful I came back, because I probably would have lost my leg. So that didn't last long at all. I like to say I was out first ball, not to make light of what was a very traumatic situation, but I was only there for a very short period.
So you just mentioned that you had a severe leg injury. How long did it take for you for the recovery process when you got back to Australia? Yeah,
well, from such a small wound, I had fragmentation and burn wounds to the back of both my legs, but again, nothing that wouldn't have been ready to go in a week or two. A bit of minor surgery to cut out shrapnel and whatnot. And then, while I was there, they tried every antibiotic there was, and my leg just kept swelling up. My Jats crackers were starting to swell up, and decided to send me home. And even when I got home, the initial bout of IV antibiotics and other low-level cancer drugs I was to find out later weren't working, and the doctor said we might have to take your leg off if we can't get the infection. And it was like a staph, whatever, I'm not sure what variant. They never really could established that. But thankfully it did. But I lost so much weight. My brother cried when he saw me. I'd come out to see him. I was in bed on a PIC line, and nurses were coming around daily to sort me out. And I remember my brother saw me, and so I knew I looked pretty terrible, or worse than I normally do. But I was pretty low, pretty depressed. I felt hugely guilty for that I'd killed Sean, and in a way that is the truth. That's the reality, that it was my fateful decision to turn left or right that it brought the result it did. But it was a deep place. Contemplated all types of horrible things about myself and others, and etc. And I was on lots of drugs, but I kind of thought to myself that I had a moment of clarity and said, well, how am I going to get out of this? And the weight thing's easy. I've got to get strong again. I want to get back to the unit, and there's other things in life to do. So how am I going to get out of this funk mentally? Because I hadn't really been there before. I hadn't really had any great depression or anything like that. Mum died, but that was reasonable, and those types of things. But this was like deep kind of self-harm depression. And I just thought, well, surely the best way to do that is to apply, well, what am I going to do with my body? I'll do the same thing with my mind, And studying psych at that stage and having an inkling to want to finish that, engaged psychologists and came up with a plan and again used those intuitive mental skills that we all have, but just with a more purposeful, deliberate mind, and kind of got my way out of it. I think that's sort of how I reflect.
Absolutely.
Or started working my way out of it,
Yeah, and it's in the book. It's like reading that part of that of when you spoke of Sean's death and how close of a mate he was for you. It really did. Like it's a power when you're talking about it, Harry. It's a powerful part of that book, and I sat and you see it in your writing, and it's a credit to you that you go on the journey and see how it really did affect you, and for a long time, and it still plays a part today. So yeah, it was a very powerful piece of writing that you wrote, mate, and you took us, the reader, into feeling what you were feeling. So well done on that.
I appreciate it, mate. That's still an ongoing journey. I'm catching up actually with David and Mary on Friday in Brisbane for a lunch, which I'm really looking forward to. So over that whole part really of my life was tough and at the time very, very hard to come back from. A lot of guilt and shame and depression, etc. But it gave me a great insight to myself, and also that as a psychologist, this is this sense, kind of self introspection, where I've become more interested in that more deliberate practice of how we go about, and I think that's the missing part. If you can move someone to a point where they can get a plan, become more deliberate, the whole world opens up. I'm not going to say that for everyone because we're all different, but I would say most of the bell curve and to the right, outliers to the right as well, you're probably going to pick up most people. And anyone I say this to veterans all the time, get a plan. Look, it's a pretty simple thing to say, but most don't. They're kind of just passive default bystanders in their own mental health. But you should have a plan. Elite athletes, if they want to improve mentally, we put them on mental skills training. We teach them about the mental skills they already have. Most of them don't even know it. They haven't got a word for it. And it's just amazing once you put a term or a phraseology or get a lexicon built around that, it makes all the difference in the world.
It's a key point you touch on, because going through my own mental challenges, my psychologist said, let's get a plan in place, let's build strategies that can help you, and I can now know. I know the signs of when I'm having a bad day, and when I want to get back to the frequency that the good frequency of where I'm at. I now can pick where I go. Oh, yep, we're starting to slide. We need to get back up to there, and I can do that. And it's something that you touch on with veterans, and some of the other veterans I've spoken to where they say, you know, they've got PTSD and some go, oh, well, I turn to the bottle. And it seems to be a common thing that some veterans, that's the answer where, you know, you will never find the answer at the end of a bottle. It's just something that's, you know.
Yeah, I think that's ubiquitous with humans. There seems to be a propensity to want to, self-harm in that regard. And look, you know, a beer does make things a little better for a while, but so I think, you know, the message to those who can get a bit of clean air to get to it, get a plan, go and see a psychologist, a counsellor, or a trusted friend even. You know, peer support's got great research and evidence behind it. But then there's a whole cohort of people who can't. You know, they're that buried, they're that deep in it, and that becomes then the responsibility of friends and the people around them. So if you haven't heard from someone for a while, just check in on them and then maybe even pay them a visit. And as punishing as it can be sometimes, because it is bloody hard work, veterans give me the shits regularly, don't worry about that. But it might be just that one time you do grab them or take them or whatever that moves. Remember, life's not a series of days, weeks, months and years all in one big coherent lineage or linear track. It's really, I think, if it can be broken down into probably 20 moments over 50 or 100 years, however long you're lucky enough to live for. And you think about it, the disproportion that there'll be key moments in your life or any of their short periods that have a disproportionate impact on your whole life. So this, I think, you know, a sense of punctuated equilibrium where there's these kind of high spikes of activity. So if you think to yourself, if you can impact someone and be one of those moments, you know, be a moment for someone who's down, and wouldn't it, how great it could be when that some person reflects back and says, I was this, and then I spent a day with Adam and that turned my life around. You know, I would ask everybody to explore that as an impact, living impacts.
Absolutely, and it's, you know, Harry, I look at it too and say that it's something that I live by now, that if we can just change one person's life and inspire them to make change, well, then I've achieved my mission on this earth. And you know, because we're all here for a purpose. There's, you know, I'm a big believer in that we are here for a purpose, and we're here to help them to get to, you know, and I can say it now, Harry, that if I didn't get the help that I got 7 years ago, I wouldn't be here. And I say it on every podcast when I speak to a veteran who's gone through similar, is that we're getting better, but we need to break down the stigma of it's weak to speak, and it's not weak to speak. I can honestly say I would not be here if I didn't seek the help when I needed it. And you know, I honestly, as I say, I've got my family, my friends, and my psychologist who helped me to get to where I am today. And I can only say to people, go out and do what Harry's saying, like seek the help. If you need help, seek it. So I'll just go back just a touch to, you were deployed to Timor, and what did you take away, and what was your highlight from your Timor deployment?
Timor was really challenging because I'm not sure if you're across the 3-block war I think it's by Krulak, Charles Krulak, is it? It's been a while since I've touched it, but there's this concept that, you know, future soldiers will need to urban fight, and on one city block they'll be in combat fighting with their guns and hands. On the next city block they'll be doing humanitarian aid as they help the civilian populace, you know, with beans and blankets. And on the third city block they'll have to do diplomacy or key leader engagement. So there's these three kind of combat, humanitarian and like diplomacy. That's not the term you use, but so I say that because I think in Timor that was the first time I had to be all three, and sometimes all at the same time. And whilst there was no combat or fighting in Timor, and it was more of a humanitarian type of gig, it was just much more challenging, and also having a high level understanding of the politics behind the scenes between the chief players. You know, we had a front row seat, and in fact a starring role at times in Alkatiri, or the politicking, Alkatiri, Guzmao, Horder, and old Alfredo Renato. So it was challenging, interesting. I felt like I grew as a leader and as a team commander, we had a great team as well. You know, we all got on really, really well. I think we all enjoyed, again, that term. It's not synonymous with war and combat and human degradation, but we enjoyed and had a really spirited deployment.
So one of your other passions is music. How has music helped you going like with service and also post-service?
Well, music during it's always been music in the house. So all growing up, always mum and dad were mad for it. So it's always been there. Come from a musical family. Mum's side, we had like the pseudo Partridge band, the Waits and the Ducases, and used to travel around WA playing music. My father played music. He played guitar to me as a young kid, and so it's always been there. The role that it's played, you know, again, not deliberately early on, but certainly later in my career and now, it's kind of therapeutic. I love to write music and write lyrics, and you know, I'm happy to say I've written hundreds of songs and recorded 7 odd albums of songs. So that's definitely part of it. But one thing with my kind of overall reflection of the band is it's just a wonderful place to retreat to. You know, I've got to say, like, of all the things I've done in my life, I think playing in the band is probably the thing that brings me the greatest joy and happiness. Whenever we meet up, and whether it's regiment guys, which it has been, we've had nearly 30 people through the band over the journey, and all of us good blokes, I'll say. Very low dickhead count. I'm probably the biggest one. And we've always picked well there, I think, and if I can say that brashly. And yeah, I've just loved turning up to band practice or gigs, and it's always hugging and hijinks, and it's just great, and it's great for morale. And one thing I love about music, and when you're playing in the band, you can bring on flow immediately, and I'm not a big fan of all these the psycho babble and fluff words, resilience and bloody flow and all this. But that notion of flow, where you are in deep unconscious space, where you're not really thinking about what you're doing. When you're playing in a band and the song's going well, there's this shared consciousness and shared psyche as a band that I don't experience anywhere else, and I'm not sure completely what that is. I'm kind of reading a lot about it at the moment, embodied cognition and these types of things, and I'm not sure any of the researchers have got a fucking clue either, to be honest. But I'm really interested in that because I experience it regularly and absolutely love it, and there's euphoria attached to playing with the band.
So how did you come up, you mentioned your band, how did you come up with the name The Externals?
Pretty simple. Around that time in the counter-terrorism capability in SAS, which was the only one in Australia, there was a group of out-of-uniform undercover guys who were called The Externals for whatever reason we never really understood, and they were disbanded and called something else, so we nicked the name and thought it was cool. And you know, some of the other names that were put up there were rubbish, so it kind of won by default. You know.
And the name stuck, and it's
just been, it's still there. Is it the best name we could have come up with? Probably not, but it's ours and we love it. Yeah.
So you mentioned in the book that towards the end of your career, you were tired, you were getting frustrated with what was happening, and what had changed from 2002 to your final deployment to Afghanistan?
Well, personally, I was too old, so I'd aged. I battered deep into my time in the regiment. I was 47, I think, when I left there, or hung up my my helmet, 47, 48. So well and truly, it was time, and I'd hung around, and I was lucky. I got to retire on my own terms in that regard. I didn't get, carved off to an internal posting because everyone had enough of me, and I was lucky enough. Also, I had an opportunity to set up a new capability for the unit, which is now going strong, which I'm really proud of. But I think the unit was tired. That's the headline. It really was. There was a bit of infighting. There was now it's all on the public record now, thanks to all of our journo mates and that who've written, and a few people who have talked to journalists in the unit. But the unit was super tired, and as I said before, it wasn't all because the leaders didn't know what they were doing. Neither did we. It's just it's just bullshit to think that we weren't destined masters of our own destiny. In a lot of ways, we called for more work. We asked for more. We guys. I talk about in the book. I had a parachute accident in 2007, I think. And I'm laying in the DZ. I'd just fallen 18,000 feet and thought I'd broken my femur, and I'm laying with a smashed back and a smashed leg. And I was going on a deployment later that year, and my phone rang, and it was a bloke saying, "I heard you just you just got injured. Is your spot available to go away on deployment?" And I was crazy, absolutely crazy. That's a fair income story. And so it was kind of like that. There was guys crawling over each other to get away. And I think that kind of attitude and the fact that everyone was burnt out, and also that I really believe being co-located in that camp with the rest of ADF was not a good thing. I started to look around. We were overseas and see guys with manscaped beards and wearing the latest kit and going to the gym before we're going out on 10-hour jobs. And that I don't care what anyone says. I couldn't give a shit what any of the detractors or anyone says. I wrote about it in my journals at the time. I kept journals. That's what's behind the book. And even in those journals, you go upstairs and read them. I was concerned about this new found attitude that was creeping in. It wasn't arrogance, or it wasn't. I don't think we were beyond our scope or anything like that. But I just think we'd become very good at what we did, and I think that is always going to breed complacency at some level, and maybe that was a little bit of that creeping in. We certainly weren't doing this SAS work. We were doing conventional special forces jobs. We weren't doing special missions or special ops. I did a bunch of what you might call special missions jobs in between, but copped a shitload of flack for it. Oh, what are you doing? But I stand by it. And some and others did. But we were, I would say, somehow fell into this conventional cookie cutter, bloody very narrow narrative.
Absolutely, and you mentioned earlier on that you've got to have a plan, and one of your key passions is education. How did you implement education before you discharged from the army?
With a bloody mind. In 2008, that was really the kicker. When I was laying in bed, I was thinking, what am I going to do? And particularly when the doctor said, if we can't get the infection, and that was one night in particular, but it was probably about a week before they really got on top of it. And I thought, what am I going to do? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go get a uni degree, and I'm going to come back as a psychologist, and that was kind of sealed in fate then. But I thought then, what about others? And I always had a bee in my bonnet, and I still do, about how the officer class get 99% of all the education, and the soldiers essentially can go bloody find it themselves. And that's true, because at the time you look around the unit. This isn't long ago. This is only 2013. It's not even 10 years ago. You look around the army or look around the Defence Force, and there were soldiers studying everywhere but paying for it themselves. And I thought that was hugely unfair. We got this massive university sitting in Canberra, not a soldier to be seen on site except for washing dishes and bloody doing admin. And all of the education, all officers who had spent X amount of time in the military get basically a free gifted education. And I thought that was just bullshit, and here we are trying to nation build and all the rest of it. I hear all this narrative. So I thought, if they're not going to do it, and I was paying for my own degree as well. I actually got a question in an email once, what's a soldier studying psychology for? What benefit is that going to bring to us? Well, here we are only 10 years later, because mental health wasn't even being thought of in the early 2000s and teens, not even thought of. So I thought, fuck it, if you're not going to pay for it, if you don't think I'm worth it, I'll go and start my own program. So we started it, found a few blokes to jump on it, got some people to pay us some money, and I'm glad to say that we've put near 80 operators through tertiary and vocational education, and that's building every year. There's way more people than we can afford to put on it. Anyone listening, if you've got a spare bloody $150,000, let's send it our way. It's, I think, about the most successful ESO in Australia, and the premise of it is that it transitions too late. Great, have all these ESOs that do transition veterans. That's fantastic. Pick them up at the bottom of the cliff, but we need to start programs at the top of the cliff, and this is the first of its kind. I think nothing else does this. So I've actually taken it to a parliamentary committee on military and veterans in Canberra. It's been sitting there a while, and I'm agitating hard in the background to say, here, we've proven the concept. It'll cost about, I can't remember, it was like a couple of $100 million a year, but when you look at the billions that we're spending on veterans to pick them up, I think that it's got huge merit. I think I've made my point. I get pretty on my high horse about this stuff, because nothing's changed. And education is the key. We all know that education in poverty-stricken environments, particularly women, if we get that to those people, that is one of the surefire ways to lift the playing field for everyone.
Absolutely, and I think, Harry, whenever I speak to a veteran who has been medically discharged, they struggle to find a purpose and what's next. And like you've said, if they've got a program that they can go into, a scholarship or something that along the lines of that can help them get to what's next, I feel that that's only going to be beneficial and sort of help fix the big problem that we've got that face veterans.
Yeah, well, I think that it is good for when you leave, but the Wanderers education program starts from deep inside your career. Yeah, okay. So I'm hopefully heading back soon to have these same discussions again with the new guys coming through. I do a bit of mentoring and whatnot back in the unit still, which is great. And I say to them, your exit plan starts now. You could fall out of a helicopter, get shot, die, whatever tomorrow. It's of course, you might lose a leg. What are you going to do? What's your plan B? And I think those discussions are much easier to have now. And so from 3 to 5 years inside your career in the unit, you can apply. And it's not just about getting an MBA. I just used the MBA to start with, and a few officers. Just used them to get get it up and running. And then we chucked the lads in, and women as well inside the unit. So it's not just about an MBA. It's about whatever you want to do, vocation, whether it's small business. You spend all this time selecting these people. I love the unit obviously and the operators, but I spend all this time selecting them. It's worth a bit of extra money to invest in them, so that they come out, so they can continue giving back to the community. And that's the same for all veterans. By the time you put someone who's done 4 years, the amount of money that we've invested in time and labour and instruction and corporate knowledge and all the other stuff, so what, they get out 4 years. Let's make sure while they're there, let's prep them so they're better than we left them. And I think that's part of the problem. One other thing you mentioned about medical discharge, we've really got to take a hard look at this. This is going to be very unpopular, but I think it's too easy to medically discharge. It just is, and I know that I'm well supported in that opinion. Well, I think we've crossed the pendulum, swung so far back to support our veteran community now that we're almost teaching them helplessness. In fact, and personally, I think we are definitely with the pendulum. So we need to, kind of revisit that whole journey map, I think it's kind of got out of control, and a lot of ESOs are making a lot of money out of the welfare generation, and that concerns me deeply.
Absolutely, and like you've said, like you've touched on some very key points there with, some of these people, like, and not just SAS, like even Army Intelligence and these are highly skilled people that can thrive in the civilian world as well, and that their skills aren't being put to use, and it's such a key point that you touch on.
Yeah, I would just add one more to that. I'd like to see it really emphasised in our frontline soldiers, because they don't have the benefit of those key skills you talk about. And I agree with you 100%. There are some amazing skills that are being pickpocketed by industry as we speak. But I'd like to see a lot more emphasis on our frontline soldiers. Now, I'm all for everybody should be recognised and all the rest of it, and we've even gone, combat badges for all. But I don't mind saying this, but I really don't care. Our infantry, our artillery, and the frontline corps, armour, etc. They're the ones that bear the brunt of our expectations. They're the ones that we cast the biggest magnifying glass over. They're the ones that we ask to go and lay down their lives explicitly. It's written into the contract of an infantry soldier that you'll run and die. It's kind of there in the narrative. And I would like to see a larger emphasis placed on those, though, because the skills that they bring are probably more needed than ever. This kind of collaborative, organised teams of humans. There's some skills in there that we're only just starting to untap. So, rant complete. So.
I think it's a subject that needs more work, and I think I love to see the passion that you have on the topic, because it is, it can solve a lot of problems if you get funding and you get support, and I really feel that it's great that you do have that passion, and mate, absolutely keep on it, because it's so passionate. So, and I can see it in you why you're passionate for it. And so, how did you get your nickname, Harry?
So that was given to me by a guy by the name of Ken Studley. He was on my Rio, and at the time there was a Rodney Roode character. Probably wouldn't cut the muster these days, Rodney Roode, but bloody funny. He had a character named Harry Muff, and so Studs thought I was a bit of a Harry Muff, and I was Moffitt, and I got Muff a lot, so Harry Muff, and that stuck, and stuck like mud. I often think during my transition, in planning different stages of my transition, I've thought about changing my name back to Anthony Moffitt, and thinking to myself, that's that would be the ultimate transition or transformation. I think transition's a shit word for its purposes, but that would be the ultimate transformation to go back to Anthony. But no, I think everyone calls me Harry pretty much now, except for a few.
It's a good nickname, and I know that there's a famous World War I soldier too that was he was killed at the Battle of Fromelles, and Moffitt.
Correct, and in fact, up until I found that out, I read Fromelles. Someone said you should read this, and I read it, and there it was, and spelled exactly the same way, which is unusual. Double F, double I, double T. But when I read that actually cemented the name Harry for me, and I kind of wear it as a bit of a badge of honour,
Absolutely, and just to touch on that, how was your trip to the Western Front when you did go over, and what did you take away from that experience?
Oh, just the fact that I want to go and spend more time there, and Danielle and I have been back a couple of times, and we'll go back again. So I encourage anyone who hasn't been there. It's beautiful countryside. It's hard fought land for millennia, and Australia's got a lot of blood spilt there. So do yourself a favour, get across and have a look. And I haven't met an Australian who hasn't been there. Even the pacifists and people who might shudder at those things who haven't come back and been touched by it.
Absolutely. I can only echo the words that you've just said. It's a very moving, especially the men in gate and the last post service. It is very special. And going to Pozieres as well, that's a very, and even the National Memorial as well at Villas Bretno, it's all, you can read it in books, Harry, you can see it on documentaries, but when you're actually there, seeing the true scale and the true cost of war, it hits home, doesn't it? It really does. So during your first deployment to Afghanistan in 2002, and you recall this in the book, you spoke to an American CIA agent who predicted that the Taliban would win. He spoke of a deep difference between how the Taliban see war and how the West does. Did last year's exit from Afghanistan surprise you, and did you remember that conversation with John?
Yeah, I didn't reflect explicitly on John last year, but yeah, they were wise words and they made a lot of sense. And look, if you're a student of military history, probably not hard to imagine that it was going to end up any other way. The fall of Kabul, well, the Taliban, well, they live there. You know, they're from there, and the Taliban are not this kind of radical group of extremists that are all of the same ilk. They're kind of a broad church, if I can use that kind of that metaphor. They're so they've got some radical elements to them, and they've got some quite moderate elements. So, but they live there. You know, so if you're an invading country, it's pretty rare unless you're a completely raze it to the ground type of invading military. It's going to be pretty hard to win a guerrilla war against locals. And it certainly felt like that after, as I said earlier, 2006 or 7. It certainly felt like we were kind of just spinning our wheels. There wasn't any real drive to win or expunge or expel those radical elements. It was just kind of pocket fighting. So, and that's not to make light of the hard fighting that was done, particularly in the Helmand provinces, but it was more that, kind of Indochine kind of, garrison fighting, just set up a hard point and defend yourself for the next fucking 6 months, So, and trying to protect reconstruction efforts, which are, again, history shows us they're just not very sticky. But certainly last year was with no surprise. I've had lots of people say, "Oh, geez, Kabul, fall of Kabul, what a debacle in the US." I'm still trying to work out in my mind, how do you withdraw from a war? You don't kind of turn the lights off, lock the door, and then hand the keys over to the next bloke. There is no better way. I wonder if there wasn't a much better way to do it. There was a better way to do it. And there's lots of people who've written lots of armchair critic stuff about it, but at the end of the day, if the US want to get out of there, and sure, they left a bunch of hardware behind, but I don't know any war where they haven't left a bunch of, again, history kind of shows that you either retreat getting your asses handed to you, maybe Napoleon, or you just rip it off like a Band-Aid. And I think the US went for the second. As for the rise of the Taliban, again, they fucking lived there. It wasn't as if they were on the outer and then they all surged in. They were living there the whole bloody time. If any of these armchair generals were saying that, that they surged back in, they didn't. They just arose out of the populace. And just remember, only months earlier, Australians were fighting them in the middle of Afghanistan. So this, how did they take over so quickly? Because they were fucking there, the armchair generals, again, they're just all vying for a bit of oxygen. But I just marvel. I need to take a bit of a relaxo and a deep breath and just have a look at some history. Again, horrible scenes. I've been working super hard in the background to help people out and resettle. We just resettled, Danielle and I just helped resettle dozens, hundreds of people in the last few months back here in Australia. Got a game of cricket next week coming up. to that end against the interpreters and translators that have come back. So the work is not over, and it's easy to be disappointed and drop your bottom lip, but my message to anyone who feels anger or frustration, take it out in trying to help, because there's plenty of work to be done to help them keep it on the front page.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned the book a fair bit through the podcast. Where did the idea of writing 11 Bats come from?
In 2015, I knew that I'd finished on the tools, and I'd done a bit of work in our high performance centre and reinvigorated that. And I had a sense that I would miss the unit, and I had in my mind to be posted outside the unit to kind of come down, because you do need to come down from the unit. You can't just rip it off like a Band-Aid. I don't believe. And I had a sense that I'd go away and journal. And my idea was to go away and write just a bunch of stories, and just kind of reflect on long walks in the English countryside. I went to Wargrave in the Thames Valley, took out a room above a pub, the Bull Inn, and got up at 5 a.m. and wrote and journaled. And I journaled most of my life, so it wasn't strange for me. I did have a sense of writing, but I wasn't sure what that was or what it looked like. I certainly didn't have a mind to write a book at that stage. I thought that was arrogant and would be the worst thing I could do as an SAS guy, get out and write about it. Caught the ire of my mates, but I just wrote and really enjoyed it, and I always have. So I wrote about 200,000 words. It's huge. I've still got the in the bookshelf. I've still got the original print off what I did. It's about that bloody thick, and so that was it. And then I came back. My 11 bats. The collection of 11 bats around which the book is centred were displayed in the Australian War Museum and also here at the Shrine of Remembrance. And that was when I started to get approached by publishers. And I said no to the first couple. And then Tom Gilliard at Allen and Unwin got me drunk at the Kelvin Club one night, and I thought he got it. And I said I'll only write about it if I can make it about the bats, because I really want the bats to be out there. I think they're the artefact of the last 20 years, if I can be so bold. And so that was it. I got together with a guy named Malcolm Knox, who's a cricket writer. That kind of sealed the deal for me, because he loves his cricket, and it just became like the biggest master's thesis that I've ever written. I put it all together. He taught me how to arrange things and gave me some great suggestions, and I wrote it, I reckon, by the end time I finished 6 times, just kind of over and over, which I loved it, absolutely loved the process, and we'll have started writing again, and we'll see what comes out.
So you mentioned the bats, that they were on display at the Australian War Memorial and the Shrine of Remembrance. Would you like to see the bats in the memorial in the future, or...?
Yeah, maybe. The problem with the museums and the memorials is that they need you to donate them, and I am not ready to donate them yet. So eventually, maybe. But yeah, I'd like to. I still harbour this dream of taking them to Lord's in the long room and doing an evening there over a glass of wine and tell some yarns, because there's some bloody ripping stories out of all of them. Not just mine. There are other people's stories as well.
Yeah. And for you, what bat has the most significance and why? And what was the hardest bat of the collection to obtain?
Well, the two hardest. One I had to hand make. That was in Iraq, so that was hard to obtain in that way. Probably the hardest one to obtain was the very first one. We sent John the interpreter up at Asadabad with the US SOF and sent him across the border. I didn't send him, he suggested he'd go. We like to think it's a life or death mission to get us a cricket bat. So that was hard. That was the Shahid Afridi bat, the very first one. It's hard to go past the one that Sean didn't get to sign. He was killed early on, and we were playing cricket only the evening, but hours before he was killed. Actually, the photo on the front of the book was taken by Sean. So that probably has the biggest place in my heart, But there's some great curiosities on there. Ramos Horta and Alfredo Renato, side-by-side signatures, and anyone who knows that story, is remarkable. Politicians, various generals, etc., and royalty as well. Old Harry and Prince Philip signed a bat. So they're, as I said, I don't mind saying, I think they're the unique artefact of the whole Afghan and period. Full stop.
Absolutely, and I think you mentioned it in the book, and it's, mate, it's like, and the thing that I loved about your book and why I wanted to get you on was, well, I'm a passionate cricket. I love cricket as well, and I played it as a young fella, but it's like you said, you credit every single person who ever signed those bats, and that was it came out again in the book. It just the respect that you show for every single person that's ever signed that bat it's paramount, and well done on, and it's just a bit of forward thinking, like there's a couple of your great mates you lost in Afghanistan, their names are on some of the bats, so it was a bit of forward thinking for you that it's a lasting legacy that they've put on those bats for you.
Oh, absolutely, and when you write a book, you got to expect, particularly coming from where I do, you've got to expect a bit of blowback. And there's been guys who have criticised and detracted. Not too many. In fact, I've been stoked at how it's been received inside the unit, the ultimate audience, really. It's been really well received. I was having a beer on the weekends with a few guys who really enjoyed it, and they're super senior guys, But even the detractors, I know, and I hope they're listening, because I know you have taken pleasure out of signing one of those bats and lined up to sign the bats. And just about everyone who went through Afghanistan, there's not too many people who haven't. And I know it was a bit of a pleasure for guys and girls to sign the bats. So I take great comfort. Even the detractors have got their signatures on the back. So
absolutely. So what are your plans now going forward with what you're doing with psychology?
Yeah, so currently status is running a business called Stotan Group. It's a high performance philosophy, and we do organisational development and psychology with corporate, sports, and government and military included. I'm really on a journey to build and grow that at the moment. We're not going to go for world domination, but I'd like to build reputation as having renown for being high performance organisation, and I think we're well on track to do that. So we've got a small team, and we'll build a bit more around that. So that's something I'm passionate about. I'm super passionate and energised about working in the not-for-profit space. I'm proud to say Danielle and I have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, seriously. And I say that because I'm really proud of that. So I want to do a lot more of that, and I'm highly competitive about that. So I want to raise more than the next person and impact more than the next person, and I want to bring that to it. And the other part is, I really want this to be the next part of our life, but as much as I can to make up for lost time with my kids and Danielle. Dan and I are thick as thieves. We spend most nights together, sitting out the back having a beer or going to dinner, and I really love it, and arguing over what's on telly. Both my kids, Georgia and Danielle, Georgia and Henry, both living nearby now, so I get to spend a lot more time with both of them. And they've missed out on a lot, and the impact of my service on them is significant. So I really want to make time for them, and I have been able to. So it's like we're pretty happy here, Adam. It's been good. The lasting kind of lesson I've learned out of my transformation, which it is that do things for other people. Just you don't need to change your values of service in the military. Keep working for other people, finding ways to add value and impact other people. Have a plan. Don't be this passive default fence sitter. And for the veterans who I spent a lot of time talking to veterans on the phone and meeting them in town and all the rest of it. Get off the grog, get off the couch, and get out and get engaged. And for your mates that can't do that, get in and give them a hand up. Even if they don't ask for it sometimes.
Absolutely, I think you just mentioned it, like the sacrifice made by families is huge, and you're no accustomed to that either. You've Danielle, Georgia, and Harry have been on the forefront of that. Yeah. What are you most proud of with what Danielle did raising the kids during your military service?
I'm not sure proud is I know what you're saying, but the word I'd probably insert there would be is grateful that Dan and I met each other for starters. Like, she called bullshit on me that I was trying to pick her girlfriend up, and lied and said I was a florist, and she called bullshit on me immediately. So she was all over me to start with. You look like a florist. Of course I do, yeah. And so I was grateful that was talk about a moment in your life. And look, Danielle's. I'm better intellectually, spiritually, physically. Well, maybe not physically. We've drunk a lot of wine together, but and emotionally and psychologically stronger because of her, as she has influenced me in amazing ways, in really profound philosophical ways. But now I'm also grateful at this end that we're still together, because a lot of families bust up, lots. I would be having a stab at the dark at numbers, but it's a lot more than what you might imagine, or maybe it is as much as you imagine. So to make it to this end fully intact, fully in love and ready to and welcoming, growing old together is just amazing. I feel so fucking lucky to be able to say that. And my kids, we're growing back together. We love each other. Don't worry about that. But I feel at times like I've still got a bit of ground to make up, and feeling I'm coming to peace with myself about that as well.
Absolutely, and I think for you, like, it would take a toll, mate. And it's looking back now, Harry, for serving for more than 25 years as an elite SASR soldier. Would you change anything looking back now with what's happened in your career and also with where you're going into the future? Would you change anything?
Probably not, because when I would have been running out of full forward for Hawthorn, we were pretty crap, so probably wouldn't have got a premiership. Look, I don't tend not to look at life like, would I change anything, or life. For a start, I won the lottery, big time. Born into a good family, white, male, in one of the most prosperous times in Australia, and being born in Australia is no mean feat. Fit and healthy, sporty, relatively smart, or smart ass. Absolutely won the lottery, and then met Dan, and so would I change anything? I hope not. I hope that if I was sitting up there and trying to, no, I don't think so, mate. I think that absolutely won the lottery, Adam. So I'm stoked.
Well, Harry, I've just absolutely enjoyed sitting across from you and you recounting your story, and it's one of courage, it's one of sacrifice, and I mean that in every sense. And all I can say is thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to our country and giving us the freedoms that we enjoy today. And all I can say is, on behalf of everyone in Australia, thank you very much. And I'd just like to say thank you to also acknowledge Danielle, Georgia and Henry. But no, I thank you very much for coming on True Blue History.
No, look, I appreciate it. I'm grateful for your comments, mate. And thank you for what you're doing too. I think the stories, it is the stories. And as a psychologist now, I realise that it's probably the most powerful thing that we can do is tell our story, be they good, bad or indifferent. And so thanks for sharing it.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And if you feel like supporting us, you can now via our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/True Blue History, or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/True Blue History, and check out our new website, truebluehistory.com, for more great content.